Hey, how y'all doing today? Hey, but we have a great treat for you today. This is Stephen Croy. I got Alex Piech from Dallas, Texas, Fort Worth area. Well, we decided to do a broadcast, a live broadcast today. A lot of talk about this NAR lawsuit. Definitely a lot of information is floating around the internet. We're getting some questions from our customers and our clients around town and in both of our areas. And so we thought we'd go ahead and unpack some of these questions people may have, maybe enlighten you on some of the things and things you may not know. And so I definitely look forward to answer any questions we have that you guys can give us. Go ahead and drop any questions in the either Facebook or YouTube channels that you're watching this on. And we look forward to answering any questions you may have. So Alex, what are you hearing in Dallas?
Interesting times in real estate for sure. I think this is a great topic to talk about because, when the verdict came down, $1.8 billion, National Association of Realtors, Keller Williams, Home Services of America, Anywhere, Remax, they were all in this original lawsuit. When you're found liable, that's a big number. That has really it's kind of gone viral, right? I mean, it's clickbait everywhere. I was talking to my team about this yesterday, and I said, hey, just throw it in Google, and you're going to see all the articles being written up. Forbes, Washington Post, New York Times, like they all have these big salacious headlines. A lot of clickbait stuff to gather people's attention to this. And there's some interesting things about this lawsuit because the liability was found for conspiring to fix real estate commissions. And it's really interesting because, like you mentioned, you've been doing this over 20 years. I've been doing this for over 20 years. It's almost a little bit laughable because real estate agents from one brokerage to another do not speak to each other. It is a very I hate to say it's more of a cutthroat type business, right? Like we're all hunting out there. And we're not trying to talk to our competitors and give anybody an advantage. So it's interesting. So we're going to unpack the lawsuit. I was keeping up with it at the end of each day. Inman would kind of give a play-by-play recap from inside the courtroom on the different testimonies and the different angles of what people were speaking about. What's really interesting, I don't know if people realize this. One of the plaintiffs, her mother was a real estate agent and benefited from the sales here, which is very interesting. I think there is a lot of money in real estate, and the attorney is going to do very well. Unfortunately, I don't think the people will end up doing very well, but the attorney is going to make a ton of money for sure.
Absolutely. A lot of this came from protecting buyers. This started many years ago to protect buyers. We'll get into that a little later, but let's go ahead and start about what the lawsuit is all about. Okay. I mean, sellers were saying that they were forced to pay excessive fees to real estate agents like us under the National Association of Realtors, the NAR rule, that where sellers are required to pay commissions to the agent representing the buyer. Now, sellers will claim that they've forced to pay excessive fees to those agents. Now, home sellers, said brokerages collaborated. They colluded with, and NAR to enforce what is called cooperative compensation rule. And let's jump right into that. Let's talk about what the cooperation compensation rule means. So people can understand this better. As a realtor, we belong to a local association, and those associations have the MLS. And this is how we promote our listings to other agents who may have a buyer, a ready, willing, and able buyer. And so we're required to offer a cooperation fee to other agents in order to access to the MLS. Well, the fee's not set. It's never been set. It could be a penny for all intents and purposes. We, as the listing agent, we will put in there what we feel is best for the seller, but it could be as low as 1%. So Alex, tell us more about this verdict.
Yeah. So what's interesting is I think it's important to understand that MLS is a private website for realtors only. We have to pay in order to be a member of that. In order to be a member, there are rules, just like if you were to join a private country club, there's things you can do and you can't do. And it was established to say, okay, if you're going to take advantage of the MLS, which is going to allow you to put your listing in, and instantly, as soon as you hit enter, get access to every realtor in your market so that they can share your listing with their buyers, helping bring their buyers to your listing so your seller can sell their home. Okay, that's what it was all intended. There's no public access to it, it's private. In order to do that, they said, if you're going to use our service, you have to offer out something to those agents for bringing the buyer to your listing, a cooperation fee. Like you said, it was never fixed. There was, National Association of Realtors had a rule that said it had to be at least a penny. So there had to be an offer. Now they have backtracked on that and said, you know what, it was a penny, fine. It can go to zero. You can now offer zero in some MLSs, not all MLSs. Only certain MLSs have adopted that, okay? So what's the difference from a penny to zero? A penny, not a big deal, right? So what's interesting is under the verdict, sellers would no longer be required to pay their buyer agents. So, you know, again, I don't want to get in trouble from talking commissions because obviously we see how that can come back to hurt you. But, you know, most people have this crazy assumption that the seller is paying a listing agent X% and a buyer agent X%. So they're saying is, no, we should only pay our listing agent. I don't care about the buyer agent. And we're going to talk about the impact of that because I think sellers winning this verdict actually really hurt themselves in their ability to sell their homes, sell for top dollar, get multiple offers. We'll talk about that. So that's really what it was, is they felt like they were being forced to pay the buyer agent fee. Mm-hmm. And we're going to talk about why that is so inaccurate because it's the first thing you're taught when you get real estate. How are fees and things kind of broken out in real estate? So we'll talk about that. But Steve, go ahead. Let's unpack like really what the two major talking points are in this lawsuit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You know, because there are a few mentioned in this case that are absolutely not true. This is what just blows my mind. Not true. Not true. Number one, real estate commissions are not fixed. There's no standard commission rate. That is the fact. That's how it's always been. That's going how you know it has been throughout many of the years that we've been in the business. You know, like I said, you know, like Alex said, we've been doing this 20 plus years each. Now, the second issue is that sellers are paying the buyer agent fee. That's absolutely not true. And we're going to touch on that because real estate commissions, the first thing we're taught when we're in the real estate business is that commissions are negotiable. All that is negotiable. So sellers have options, Alex, don't they?
Absolutely. Like that is the first thing you learn when you're talking about commissions. Do not fix commissions. You can charge whatever you want. They're negotiable. Like that is in the law book 101. First thing you learn. But, you know, you're right. So, you know, we're talking about they were forced to pay. Well, guys, sellers have options. They've always had options. You know, they can go for sale by owner and cut out the real estate agent altogether. They could go with a discount real estate broker, a flat fee, you know, hey, give us $500, we'll throw you in the MLS type thing. And nowadays, for the last several years, there's been these iBuyer, Cash Buyer, Zillow, Open Door, OfferPad, and sellers have always had the right to sell their home to one of those companies who's going to pay you 70, 80 cents on the dollar for the value of your home. You had that choice. Now, most sellers say, well, if we go the real estate route, it's advantageous because we sell our house for the most amount of money. So they're making choices. They have choices. So I really feel like that was very misleading, and I don't understand how that wasn't conveyed correctly. I also believe that your compensation, what you charge a potential client, should be a direct reflection on the value you bring, the services you offer, and the results that you've been proven to bring to other clients. The more value, the better the result that you can bring over the average realtor. You should be compensated fairly based on that value that you are able to bring. So I just think that the whole real estate commissions are being fixed. That's so crazy. Like I said earlier, I've never had a conversation with another real estate agent from another broker who I'm competing with on a listing. I'm trying to win. So trying to talk to them about where they should bring in their commissions, I've never, 20 plus years, that doesn't happen. So I think I just don't know how that was missed. And I think it's so easily understood by most people that, there's 1.5 million real estate agents. We're all independent contractors. We don't get paid a salary. We only get paid when we bring a result. Why would we be talking to our competition and helping them? Because if you're telling them what they should list for, now there's no difference in value. You could potentially lose more listings. Like, it would make no sense. So it's really unclear how that wasn't easily conveyed in court.
Absolutely. Sellers, let's go to the point of sellers pay the buyer agent fee. Now, first and foremost, when we're listing and we're marketing a home for a seller, our main goal, like you said, win. We want to win for the seller. We want the seller to get top dollar. Well, the way we do that is we market that property effectively. Sellers hire us as a listing agent to sell their house. The agent, we charge a fee. And, they should have a strategy on how to sell your home. Any agent that you hire should have a significant marketing strategy that includes how they market your home and how they find the right buyer to get you top dollar. Now, most agents are part of the local MLS, and this allows the agent to expose your home to all of the agents in the market who may have a buyer. Now, the listing agent compensation to the agent who brings the buyer and the buyer's offer is accepted. Now, this is where the compensation is not fixed. The listing agent can offer anything they want. Now, having said that, we want the seller to get top dollar. So we want to offer this compensation to a buyer's agent. And so Alex, who's paying the buyer's agent?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think this is where things get cloudy and people just don't understand. When you sell your home, you hire a listing agent, like you said. That listing agent has to show you what they do to get your home sold, how they market it, how they expose it. And they're going to say, in exchange for what I do, I'm going to charge you X%. Okay. Seller agrees to that. Now, that listing agent is going to go into their tool bag and say, okay, what am I going to do for marketing? I'm going to run ads. I'm going to do flyers. I'm going to do open houses. Oh, you know what? My best tool is something called the MLS, because in Dallas, Fort Worth, there's 18,000 other realtors who are also marketing and working with buyers. What if I tap into that huge market and say, hey, I've got this listing. I will pay you as the listing broker a compensation if you bring me a buyer and we accept your buyer's contract. Okay? It's compensation only if you bring the buyer. That buyer writes an offer that is acceptable to my seller. When that transaction closes, okay, the seller pays the listing broker their fee. That listing broker then has to take a percentage of their fee and pay the buyer broker for bringing them. It's almost like a referral or an exchange of compensation for that, right? That is how it is actually paid. That is how it is paid. But, there's a lot of confusion in that.
Absolutely. So where did the confusion come from? I mean, you ran your own independent brokerage. I ran an independent brokerage for many years. We both, trained our agents that came in. Now we're both with EXP because the amazing resources that we get through the EXP national network and now worldwide of 24, I think it's up to 24 countries. But there's a confusion, call it training. But why do most people think that sellers are paying the buyer commission?
Yeah, it's crazy. I think number one, some agents do a poor job in explaining how compensation works. I don't think the seller understands they're hiring you as the listing agent. I think a lot of agents say, my fee is X. And if there's a buyer agent, their fee is Y. That's not true because the seller's not paying it. You are as the listing agent. You should have a marketing strategy of how you expose that listing to the potential buyer agents in your market. So I think that's confusing. I think that the contracts, I know here in Texas, when I fill out a listing contract, it's got what my fee is. But it also has something in there that says, if another agent brings a buyer, I'm going to pay them X percentage. And because it's in the listing contract, I think a lot of sellers assume that they're paying that fee. And again, on the closing disclosures, when you sell your home, you get an accounting sheet of, okay, your offer price, we paid off your mortgage, we paid off all your loans, you had to pay the title company, the attorneys, everything. And then there's listing agent, and then there's buyer agent. So when you look at that, it's like, oh, I paid for that. So that's where the confusion comes in, I think, is in some of the paperwork. What people don't understand is the buyer's the one that brings the money to the table. You are a seller, you hired your agent, you agreed to a certain compensation. The buyer brings all the money, and then they say, here you go, Mr. Seller, here's all your money. The seller pays their listing agent. Listing agent then splits with the buyer agent from their proceeds. This whole thing comes from the net proceeds of the sale, in which everyone's already agreed and knows how the compensation flows. I think it's just not being explained properly. And I do think by putting things in the listing agreement, like the buyer agent compensation, the seller shouldn't care about that at all, because that should be paid from the seller's agent. Okay, the seller should not care. They are hiring you as the seller. You should have a strategy. And if you are going to go on the MLS, you're going to offer compensation. That should be done, in my opinion, outside of that listing agreement. That's probably where a lot of confusion comes in for sure.
And some of it may come from full disclosure, transparency. Our forms are very similar to yours. We've compared both of ours, and ultimately it's like full disclosure, transparency. We are listing out what we're going to compensate, a buyer's agent. And, but like you said, I called it training. There's other things that could be done, but how do you think we can clear this all up?
Yeah. And again, this is just my opinion. I think you could remove the buyer agent, that whole line of the listing contract. You can remove it from the agreement, because again, that is a compensation between the listing broker and the buyer broker. That may help. Now, let me tell you why I also think it's not a bad idea that it's there, because if I'm telling you, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, I'm going to put your house on the MLS, I'm going to get those other 18,000 agents to want to sell your home just as badly as I am, and I'm willing to compensate them out of my fee. And let's say me personally, I'm willing to give them 50% of my fee. I'm really enticing them to bring buyers. That's good for you as the seller. Where if somebody else said, well, I'm going to offer out $1 to bring the buyer. Okay, well, now who's going to pay the buyer fee? Well, that could impact the amount of buyers that come see your home. It could impact the number of buyers that can afford your home. So I also think, for me, that is a marketing cost. It is just one part of how I market to get your home sold. So I can see the pros and cons, but I think you could remove it, and that would clear it up. I think the offer of compensation is an agent to agent, listing broker to buyer broker thing, clears that up. Remove it from the closing disclosure. The closing disclosure should say, Mr. Seller, you hired this agent, you paid him X amount of dollars. Now that agent is cooperating with another buyer broker. That should be an outside the closing of the seller transaction.
Yeah.
So that, for me, EXP, my check for bringing you the buyer should come from realty executives, Coldwell Banker, Century 21, Coldwell Banker, because that's who the compensation agreement was with. Now, what they've done to simplify things is just cut the checks from the proceeds of sale at the closing to make it easy. They shortcutted that step, but unfortunately, it seems like that shortcut of the step has sellers believing they're paying for the fee.
Yeah.
So maybe we just remove that, and that is handled brokerage to brokerage.
Yeah. And, there's been changes over the years, and, and this one may spawn a change, and that's where, we're going to touch on that a little later about, how this all may affect everyone. But, certain buyers, this is what bothers me or concerns me. For certain buyers, like first-time home buyers, also the big group that I'm a part of as a veteran of the United States Air Force, veteran buyers. This may very well affect them because they literally, they would be affected the most. Now, for example, veterans, the best, I always say the best, benefit of being a veteran of the armed forces is the VA buying, loan that you can get, the VA loan. And with that VA loan, you don't bring a down payment. You do typically pay closing costs. But if we have to put that on the buyer side, the first-time home buyers and veterans, those are going to be the people. Those are the groups that, and we need those groups. Those groups deserve to get some help to get into their first home or to buy a home after serving their country. So this may hurt them. What do you think?
Yeah, I think, with what they're talking about and what most pundits are talking about and most doom and gloom real estate agents are talking about is, oh my gosh, they're trying to get rid of buyer agency. They're trying to get it so that the listing agents can no longer pay the buyer agents. And what happens if that happens? Well, let's just kind of go back and remember that buyer agency is relatively new, right? It was established in the early 1990s, so not that long ago. And it was established to protect home buyers because home buyers were being taken advantage of. They weren't giving the proper disclosures, the proper advice. It was buyer beware because both realtors represented the seller's best interest. There were still two realtors involved in the transaction. The difference was both realtors represented the seller's best interest. So in the 1990s, buyer agency came through and it was like, okay, very similar. Like if you got dragged into court, you're not going in there unrepresented, going up against, a Harvard grad attorney, and you're out there by yourself trying to navigate law. So this was put into place to protect buyers, to make sure you had somebody with your best interest in mind who would explain the contracts, explain the legalities, explain the risk involved, help you formulate an offer, help you understand home values to make sure you weren't overpaying, put certain things in the contract to protect your best interest. So that's what it was established for. Now, if they're trying to remove that and say, buyers, if you buy a home, it's your responsibility now to cover the fee for your buyer agent. Well, the two parties who are going to struggle to afford that are veterans and first-time home buyers, like you said, because they're usually the two groups. And again, I'm saying usually. There's plenty of people who have a lot of money, but they're usually the groups who are getting into real estate with the least amount of money out of pocket, the lowest down payment. For veterans, it's 100%. For first-time home buyers, currently it's 3.5%. So if they're getting in with very little money, and a lot of times that's because of the circumstances of where they are financially, they're getting their entry-level first home, they're not going to be able to afford private representation. So what happens? They either go unrepresented and try to navigate this, or they go to an attorney who will do the contract but knows nothing about real estate, knows nothing about home values, knows nothing about the neighborhood, and they go on it blindly. Or they go right to the listing agent who contractually works for the seller and doesn't care who you are. Their job is to get the seller the best deal possible. Again, now we're right back to where we were in the 1990s when buyers were unrepresented. Okay, so those two are going to be hurt dramatically. Mm-hmm. The other person who's going to get hurt, and they don't even realize it, home sellers. This was not a victory for home sellers because now what's going to happen is if I've got a buyer for your home and there's no longer, the listing agent can't compensate me for bringing, maybe there's no more MLS. We go back to the old school of selling out of a book, which means nobody even knows your home's available. So now less buyers know about your home. Okay, that's not a good thing for sellers. If we're trying to get top dollar, we want all the qualified buyers. So that's an issue. The other issue is, what if I have a buyer, they want representation, they can't afford it? Well, now we got to go to the seller and say, hey, we love your home, but I got to offer you below asking price because my buyer's got to cover the fee. Other option is, hey, we love your home, we'll pay you what you're asking, but the seller needs you to pay their closing costs, which includes my fee. Now, guess who really paid for the buyer agent? You, Mr. and Mrs. Seller. You paid it in a seller's concession. You went from not paying to now you're actually paying directly dollar for dollar out of your pocket. They don't even realize that. So I think it's going to impact the amount of buyers in the market. It'll impact the amount of buyers that come to a specific listing, and it could potentially impact whether or not you get full price offers or you start seeing below asking price. All of those actually negatively impact the bottom line for a potential home seller. So I think some people are missing the boat on that. It could actually hurt them as well.
Yeah, it really is amazing how, some people win, and then there's always somebody who may not win in the same scenario. So no, we're definitely, tuned into what's going on. We're definitely looking at how this may affect us. I think Florida, for example, is going to see, if there's changes, it's going to come a little bit of a later time frame. I believe our contracts and our agreements are more in line with full disclosure and transparency. I hope that there's more training going on for some of these newer agents. I mean, Jacksonville, we had almost 10,000, I think, not 18,000, but we had, a good amount. I think we've decreased that number. I want to say we're somewhere between 8 and 10,000 now. But training is important, and that's going to have to improve. Looking see if anybody had any questions. We didn't get any questions, Alex, but like I said at the beginning, somebody who sees this at a later time, that's the beauty of the internet. Drop in a question, pose it to Alex or myself. Again, this is on all of our channels, and we'll be able to make sure that we can answer those questions for you. Make sure we can get back to you. I mean, the bottom line is, knowledge is power. We want to make sure we provide as much knowledge as possible to keep the unknown, because a lot of the news networks and a lot of these, these portals are not really giving the buyers and sellers of the future, a lot of information other than the bad news. Oh my gosh, they're guilty. They're, $1.8 billion. I mean, there's going to be appeals. Obviously, there's going to be some delays and all that. But, in essence, when it comes down to it, Alex, I know you do a heck of a job for your sellers. I think my team and I do a phenomenal job as well. We're going to continue to do that.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, you nailed it. It's already been appealed. We're not going to see the true outcome of this case for years in the appeals court, right? So right now, what has changed? Right now, nothing has changed. It's business as usual in real estate. However, you're going to have some sellers who might come and say, hey, I saw this lawsuit. I don't want to pay any buyer agent fee. Okay. Put it on the MLS, put it at zero. Okay. So you as a listing agent, you need to understand, what are you going to say? What value are you bringing to the table? For me, I'm going to continue to bring my proven, repeatable home selling strategy to the table that I can demonstrate has brought our clients top dollar. It has outperformed the average agent in our MLS, outbeating them by 4 to 5% on average is what our sellers are making more through our selling system. I'm going to bring you that, and I'm going to continue to charge. Here's what I charge. And if somebody else brings the buyer, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, good news, you don't have to pay it. You've never paid it if you work with me. I'll take care of that. So for me, it's business as usual, because I've always been able to articulate how my business works with sellers. Okay. Now, there are going to be agents who don't understand the market. They're going to say, Mr. and Mrs. Seller, no problem. We'll offer zero. I'll throw it on the MLS for you. And at the end of the day, you have to really, is that the best thing for the seller? Right. Is that going to get your home sold? Is it going to get it home sold for top dollar? It may sell, but my question is, if I can sell your home for 5, 6, 7% more money, and that's what you're putting in your pocket, which one makes more sense for you? So this is where we've got to really be working with our clients to make sure they understand what this means, what the impact could mean in real estate. We need to talk to home buyers. So when they come across the situation where there's a zero being offered out, no cooperation, that's going to impact them in the buying process. How do they want to handle it? So who you work with right now as a real estate agent, if you're a buyer and you're a seller, the professional who you work with right now absolutely matters, and it matters more right now than ever before.
Yeah.
So make sure you're interviewing agents. Make sure you ask the hard questions. Make sure your agent knows what is going on. There are so many agents right now with their head in the sand that don't even know about the lawsuit, have no idea how it's going to impact real estate. They have no clue what's going on. It's scary that those are the people that are out there working with buyers and sellers. And, unfortunately, I think some of that, head in the sand, not knowing what to do, not knowing how to explain, probably led to the lawsuit that we're in right now.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, it definitely makes a big difference on who you work with. I mean, we always bring value. I mean, we tell our sellers, if we are going to cover that, I mean, our goal is to cover that expense. So they're actually netting out the bottom line, the net proceeds to them is going to be more than if you didn't have us in their corner or on their side. So absolutely. Yeah.
Absolutely, man.
All right. Well, I think that was pretty good. No questions rolled in while we were on this live broadcast, but we are open. We're going to continue to do what we do. And I've definitely enjoyed today, Alex, getting with you and going over this, current subject that's been so hot in the news.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I appreciate it. And again, I hope at the end of the day, we brought some clarity to the situation. With an unobjective view, listen, I understand there's good and bad in real estate and real estate agents. Well, I wanted to really break down the misconception of the fixed commissions and who's really paying. I don't think people understood that. So that was the primary goal. I don't really care what side you fall on. Do you think the lawsuit is good or bad? My job is to bring clarity and understanding the way it actually works in the market. Because most people have never probably had it explained to them at that level of, how things actually work in the real estate business. So hopefully we did that. And if you guys have any questions, feel free to send us a private message, DM, or give us a call. We'd be happy to discuss more with you guys.
All right. Well, we'll see you on the next one, Alex.
Thanks, Steve. Take care, buddy.
Good day.